Okay, Mishlei 1929, the last one in chapter 19. Exciting. Okay, not that the chapters matter. Yeah. All right. Nachonu, especially here, because the first pasuk, spoiler, the first pasuk in chapter 20 is also about a leitz. So I don't even know why they divided it this way, but yeah. Yeah. Okay. Nachonu leiztim shvatim umahalumos legev ksilim. Kind of difficult to translate, but you want to try?
I don't know what nachon.
Well, from nachon, how do you translate nachon? Yeah, correct is good.
For scoffers, judges.
Shvatim, not shoftim.
Tribes.
That's shvatim. Judgments, yeah. So let's just say judgments are.
I did not get 9 hours of sleep.
So I'm going to translate nachonu as befitting or proper. Let's say proper or proper for leiztim. How do you translate leiztim? Scoffers, yeah. Okay, scoffers. Umahalumos legev ksilim. I feel like we've had mahalumos
And
before.
shattering.
Yes, very good. And shattering blows. This was from the complaining pasuk, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And shattering blows for the gev ksilim. Yeah. You know, gev is to the backs of fools. Yeah. Okay. Only trans. So we have no Mitzvah, I believe. But yeah, okay, so Sadigon says, Hare ut du leiztim hamishpatim. So he translates nachonu as from, I think, the word like hachana, they're ready, okay, or destined. So mishpatim, there's actually another translation for mishpatim, not just judgments. Yeah, statutes would work also. I would say maybe sentences, not like grammatical ones, but like punishment sentences. Okay. Yeah, gavel sentences. Yeah. Was that a gauge pun?
Oh no.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'll say judgments are destined or readied for the scoffers. And the blows for the backs of fools. Yes, right. The two differences he's making is that he's saying nachonu is like destined, like atid, and then he's saying yeah. Right, right. Yeah. And then the Targum, I think, is almost literal except one thing. It says mitachnin lemimikne dine. So dine is how he's translating shvatim. Mimikne is how he's translating leitzim. And then mitachnin, he's saying it's proper or fit. So he is not taking it like Sadiwan, right? So it's proper. Okay. And then umachasa, and that's just another word for like blows. Legishmehon desichle. Gishmehon means for the bodies of. Okay, so he just translates back as a stand-in for like the whole body. Okay, fine. Let me just type that out here, right? So judgments are fitting for scoffers and shattering and blows to the bodies. And then our school says judgments are ready for the scoffers and blows for the backs of fools. Okay, that's pretty much what we have. Living Now says punishments are in store for the scoffers. Oh, you know what? Punishments is also a good translation. That's what I meant by sentences. I'm going to translate punishment. Like, I will enact punishments, or judgments against, yeah. And crushing blows for the bodies of fools. Okay, fine. And then Alter says retribution is ready for the scoffers and blows for the backs of fools. Okay, those are not significantly different enough for me to preserve them. Okay, yeah. Yeah, doesn't mean that they are. I'm gonna say I'm gonna go ahead and just phrase it as the aspect on the phrase that that the shvatim are nachonu. Shvatim are nachonu for the Leitzim and I guess and the Ksilim because sorry and no right sorry it's not the Ksilim yeah.
It doesn't.
By what?
I say and yeah, I say that.
We have so far, we just translated it. Nachanu Leitzim Shvatim. So Shvatim are either, oh, I guess I'll wait till you if you're going to write it. Yeah. So Nachanu Leitzim Shvatim. So Shvatim are either judgments or punishments. So judgments or punishments are proper for or readied for. That's Leitzim, and then Halumos Lagiv Ksilim and shattering blows to the backs of fools. Harsh blows. I think harsh blows is probably better. That kind of ends motion. Yeah. yeah. Right. Yeah. So the only questions we have so far are what are Shvatim? What are these judgments or punishments? And then what does it mean that the Shvatim are Nachonu for the Leitzim? And then what did Isaac say last? Is that do we extend? I guess what does it mean that Malumos are Nachonu for the Ksilim? I think that's shot, right? I mean, the only other way to say it would be like to say that Malumos are for the Ksilim, but they're not Nachon, and that's just weird, you know. That does seem to be saying something specific, though, right? Meaning that that if it's you translate as ready or sorry as proper, so then that would be like to the exclusion of other stuff. If someone's ready for, then it's definitely saying something specific. So I think Sadion's right in the translation that goes on both of them. We'll ask our questions, even though we kind of just did this recently, but what is a leiztim, and then what is a seal? And because we did it recently, I am fine plugging in definitions. Like if it had been a while, I would kind of like want to approach it fresh, but we just did the video on that like 2 weeks ago or something. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, so we might as well state that now, right? So what is leiztim? What is seal? So leiztim.
Aggressive and arrogant.
Yes, aggressive and arrogance.
It's
his name. Right. He acts in the wrath of maliciousness, malice. Yeah. So late is defined by maliciousness, which is he's very aggressive and enjoys causing harm to people and seeing their downfall and like putting it over them and making fun of their faults. He does it verbally. So it's haughtiness and this natural aggressiveness. So that's what makes a late. And then a Ksilim, remember what we said for Ksilim? There's the short definition in the Yona. After we had the paragraph about the passive and the paragraph about the leiztim. I mean, I have my definition of the Ksilim also, but we did Yona. It was a little bit more than that. In fact, I think I put in change a bit. No, you don't know how to look it up in the 431 sentence. I'll go into the whole sugya again. This is for Rבינו in 122. So Rבינו Yona says the Ksilim are Bale Hapulos Haraos Ve'ovrim Averos Lamalos Mishalos Einehem Inyane Hanaosam V'Ta'anugehem. So they are literally masters of bad actions, and they transgress, they violate Averos to fulfill their desires, literally like what their eyes seek in terms of pleasure and enjoyment. So like they're illicit pleasure addicts, right? Meaning that it's not just that they like pleasure, but they're even going to be doing averos, but they are. I'm learning the ballet as like addicts, because he was saying in contrast to the Pessi. Pessi is overcome by his yetzer, but like he could be swayed the other way. He's not fully attached. You know, you could break him free from it. But these people are like they're masters of illicit pleasures. Yeah.
Like in France.
Yeah.
It seems like we're looking at the fool and the scoffer as subcategories of like election.
So this is an interesting question, which actually has become this became unseated in my mind this morning, because I used to think that the Russia was the worst, and I used to think the Leitz is like the closest to the Russia. Like the Leitz is like one step removed from becoming a Russia, but I saw Rביnu Yona on our pasuk this morning that seems to indicate that the Leitz is worse than the Russia. But they're in the same like ballpark. Yeah, they are in the same ballpark.
And is it okay if I like stray a little bit from the definition?
Yeah. We you can open our minds to different definitions. You know, we were just if we need something to fall back on. Yeah.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
This almost seems like it could be like one of the titles of the Mishlei. Like
Really?
yeah, like it's like
Uh-oh.
What?
I didn't plug in my mic. I mean, presumably people could still hear, but sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Let me just make sure that this adjusts.
Can you hear me, David?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
I can't hear him, so I don't know if that means that something's wrong on my side.
is your volume on?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Good.
And you can hear me?
Yeah, I can
Okay. Yeah, sorry, Isaac, what were you saying? I
Um,
think that's 29. I don't know which way. Yeah.
like, as you said several times, like, Mishlei could have theoretically been summarized as just Idahu Chacham Roa Sanoa.
Yeah.
So this seems like, you know, a little more particular than that, but not much. It's like leiztim get punishments and Ksilim get blows.
Right. Well, so let me ask you a question then. What do you get any implication of the pasuk about what kind of punishments this is?
Yeah, well, it seems like people specifically doing it to them as some kind of
Not like
Yeah.
like
Sounds like
it's not like
an artificially imposed consequence. Yeah. So spoiler alert. I'm gonna put this in, even though because it's not gonna give us an idea, but just I think it's part of the translation. So the Meiri says that Shvatim is either from God or from people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just throwing that out there. Yeah.
Can I ask another question?
Well, let me just make sure I understand what Isaac was saying first.
Sure. It was extremely broad.
Interesting that you get it that way. I mean, I once you explain it to me that way, I can see how you're looking at it. But to me, it reads very specific. That's why I kind of like was, thought it was weird when you said it could be one of the titles of the Mishlei. It's about specific people and specific things to specific people. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I guess my intuition differs. Yeah, David.
Maybe not title pasuk, but like first pair.
Yeah, it's definitely a basic definition pasuk in terms of leiztim and Ksilim. It sounds like, but yeah, David.
Why Gav Ksilim, like specifically the back of Ksilim instead of just them getting the blow altogether?
Yeah, that's a good question. Also, I mean, that might be a simple explanation of it means physical punishment,
right,
and that it just back is just like where you punish people. Like
it's also
lashes.
It's also more like vivid.
Yeah.
A more vivid image.
Right. Yeah, it is. I mean, and then if you look at the way that the Targum says it, I mean, he takes back. I believe. Okay, I always forget. There's two rhetorical devices. There's a synecdoche and a metonymy, and they're very similar.
Yeah,
but it's when
I
you
also always forget which one's which.
It's when you use a part as a stand-in for the whole. Like if you say, I'm going to take my wheels for a spin, you really don't mean your wheels. You mean the whole car, but you're calling the car by the wheels. So here, the Targum says really back means the body.
Right.
I think that's the next.
Yeah, there's a subtle distinction. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like something. The other one is something related to.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
So the next question is, why are we focusing on like physical punishment?
Right. Yeah, and physical definitely sounds like for the second half. The first half is still like up in the air. Like I agree that the implication is it's artificial,
Mhm.
but it's much bigger than blows to the back. You know.
Okay, I mean, because I could have thought, and it sounds like maybe I shouldn't take this too far, but something to the back of the Ksilim being something like unseen because it's from the back, but it sounds like shouldn't go
Yeah,
down that road.
I'd be reluctant to take that approach. Not that I object to it in principle, but like I feel like it's just a simple explanation to say that they just get that's where you punish people. You know, lashes
Okay.
on the back.
I feel like it's also like a little bit of an English idiom, like to stab someone in the back.
Oh yeah, right. Meaning you're saying
Like
on
kind of like what
David.
you're saying,
Yeah. I don't think that that's the case here because when you give someone blows on the back as a punishment, they know they know it's coming. You know.
Yeah, and like, for giving someone blows, that's like where you give it.
Yeah, right.
You don't like give someone blows on the leg or the ear.
Right, or on the front. Like
Yeah.
there's just not a I mean that's just not the normal way to do it. Yeah.
Wow.
It definitely though has a. I mean, not to go into the psychology of torture, but it does. I could see it being a more submission inducing. Like you're like you have to bend over. I feel like you do bow bend over in order to get punishment. So it's like a position where you're kind of like it's similar to a bow in that sense, but like I don't know.
Just don't see exactly where it's coming.
Right.
Like you know when it's coming, but
Yeah, that's also true, right? Yeah,
maybe-
it's also a little bit animalistic in the sense of like, when you are, trying to get the animal to move, you hit it on the back.
Right, which is actually kind of similar to the thought I was having, which is that it seems a bit related to labor.
Yeah,
And like when, like harsh labor is,
right.
whips in the back.
Yeah. Okay, so it seems like what we have to figure out here is the nachonu. Everything is going to boil down to the nachonu, because that's the only statement that's being made about this. And then the question also is like, another question is why two different punishments for these two different people?
Something that, like on that question,
Mhm.
something that jumped out at me was that it could be that for some reason, I don't know exactly, but the seal needs a more like direct, like I guess like a more visceral punishment
Right.
than the like,
Yeah, that seems like a good starting point, simply because we don't know what the shvatim are.
Yeah.
So maybe we should start with that. Why does the seal need a physical punishment?
Yeah. It's just off your question. So it's weird that we have two different schools in this pasuk
Yeah.
that seem to be like, they're both getting consequences, but like it doesn't make it doesn't have almost like it seems almost like two audiences.
Yeah.
I know that they are the audience.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like it seems.
I mean, it is two subjects, but
Yeah,
Yeah, Joe.
Do you have to read that the Nechonu goes on both halves?
You don't have to, but if you read it without it, you would end up there anyway. Meaning, if you said, for example, that shvatim are fit for leitzim, and blows to the backs of fools. So you're definitely saying that blows to the backs of fools are appropriate. Like
maybe Nechonu is if you say prepared,
right,
then maybe the Malu ones are not like preordained.
right. Yeah, you could say that. You could say that that's the case. I just don't know. I feel like you're going to end up in some similar place anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. So can we start from that second half because it's more definite? Why do you need to hit the fool?
I just wanted to make an observation.
Yeah.
First half, which is, I think you mentioned this before that, because of Leitzim is like making enemies. People are going to want to cause want to enact like.
That's really interesting. Okay, that I like. Right. Yeah. The seal is not victimizing anyone necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, you might do a virus that happen to victimize people, but it's like nothing personal.
Yeah.
But the late is actually going out and targeting people, and so that makes me think that readied is a better translation, meaning that the late is someone who is going around mocking people and taking joy in their downfall. So he's building up a reservoir of ill will that make people ready to like pounce on him.
It reminds me of Scoffers, not that Scoffers is late, but
yeah.
just like the fact that like he's like the gadfly and like
Yeah.
people like don't like him, and
Right.
and then eventually like probably more.
Yeah. What I was going to say, slightly different, is it reminds me of Cuomo. Because you saw that during the first part of the pandemic, everyone loved him,
Mhm.
but apparently there was this ill will that was like under the surface based on certain, again, I don't know what's actually true and what's actually not. I'm just like based on you see the backlash that ill will about the nursing home stuff, and then like allegations of like sexual impropriety, and then the bullying tactics of like like scare tactics or whatever it was he's doing. So those are like the three allegations, and like you see that like the rapid switch from being like this beloved figure to like everyone's just eager to like just pounce on him,
Right.
So I guess I'm thinking of it more not in terms of the nursing home thing doesn't fit to the Leitzim thing, but if it's true that he was engaging in like these aggressive like tactics, then like there's like a retaliatory nature to the shvatim, meaning, and maybe that's why I use this shvatim, for lack of a better term, like like harsh punishments. Harsh punishments are ready for the lates.
And also like Mina connected Mina.
Yes.
In people's minds.
Yeah, right. So that's another interesting thing, is that like there's no mita connected mita. There's no interpersonal mita connected mita with the Ksilim. It's not like he did stuff to you and then you're dealing it back to him by whipping his back, But with the lates, it's like he was attacking you, and like everyone wants to attack him, and like when he gets his just desserts, and like then people are like, take some of that, like take some of your own medicine.
So
Yeah.
that sounds like a natural consequence then?
Yeah.
So what?
So okay, good. Yeah. So the natural consequence in the first half and artificial in the second one. What's the deal there? Yeah. See, this is good. Now we got a two going.
And
Yeah.
also, before going to maybe an alternative view, just a question to flush out what you're saying.
I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I've been listening carefully to when you use that phrase for months, and I want to correct it.
Okay.
Flesh.
Oh.
Flush out is to get rid of. Flesh out is to develop. And I remember Pesach first taught us that, because I think there were people in here using the word wrong. And I was like, I don't want to correct him if I don't know for sure that he's doing it, but this time I heard it specifically. Yeah, because I know you care about words.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hopefully this is not I didn't feel like I need to do that in private.
No.
Yeah.
So the fleshing part first. So when you guys talk about like natural consequences, I feel like part of like when we address that is we have to say like why we wouldn't have seen that.
Right. Correct. Yeah.
So I'm just curious.
That's a good question.
Like,
right. Yeah. Why does they even have to tell us this if it's going to happen anyway? And like, we're not, you can see why it would have to tell us this about the Ksilim, because if you have to have artificially imposed punishments, then someone has to do it, and someone has to know that this is the way to do this for the Ksil. Yeah. Also, just another question is like, presumably, okay, well, see now, Joe, you've kind of sold me on your point there about the Nechonu. Yeah, is that Nechonu definitely sounds like readied for the late, but not necessarily for the Ksil. And what I'm wondering is, the implication is that this is somehow beneficial if we do this to the Ksilim, right? Meaning maybe we can't change him, but maybe like we stop him from doing his actions. Like, I feel like that's the general assumption about artificially imposed punishments. Like, you don't want to use whipping as a punishment if you could do it in some other way. Like, you'd rather use tochacha or like teaching, or like get them to change their decision making based on like what is actually bad about this action. So if you are in the point where you're whipping his back, that's like a last resort, but presumably you're doing it as last resort because it actually helped. If it didn't help, then you wouldn't do it, So then given that, then if this is a natural thing for the leiztim and we're not implementing it, so then why do we need to know about it? Like, what's the finish? Yeah.
So maybe the only thing, the only thing that would get Leitzim to change is that he sees that because he's been like attacking others, like everyone's like eager to bring him down. Then like that like might like be able to break through to him, and he'll see that what he's doing is like harmful to himself. Because he'll see how like how it's like everyone's like ready to
Yeah.
to enact punishment.
That's interesting.
So maybe so for Ksilim, you think you might be able to like change him in other ways, but he's not going to be able to like reflect on the fact that people are like ready to break, like, you know, he's not going to see anything that's less direct than just like blow to his back.
So just to elaborate on this, one thing that the Leitzim definitely understands is he definitely understands social currency, because that's what he deals in, you know, meaning like his whole thing is putting other people down to make himself feel good, or to get people to rally around him for being like the mocker, and like he gets all this attention. So he can understand it when he becomes the object of that sort of ridicule. Yeah.
So that point actually, I feel like leads a little bit to the way I was viewing this idea. So I sort of feel like this topic is actually addressing regular people, like it's addressing all of us.
Yeah.
And I guess my definition of scoffer and fool will also apply to all of us. I'll start with it just a scoffer and then plug it in.
Okay.
It comes actually from an idea my brother mentioned to me once about how the tendency when we hear like true ideas or like a serious matter, to make light of it, you know, just like crack a joke or just like, you know, apply it in a funny way. So it's like, you know, changes the mood.
Right.
And how he pointed out to me, like, if you pay attention to when like a person brings up a serious matter, almost every single time, at least one person will make like an offhand or lighthearted remark just to like shift the mood. And so like, you don't have to take it as deep as you would have.
Right.
And so essentially like from our perspective, it's like social currency in a way, meaning like it's a social thing. But there's a natural phenomenon that he has to point out, because we're blinded by like the short-term phenomenon of like social dynamics. But there's like a natural phenomenon of like, if you're always taking that approach to like make things to make light of things, then you're setting yourself up for punishment. And it's like so visceral that it's ready for you, meaning like it's just a matter of time. It's like stacking up like boulders too far over like a certain like balance point. Like you're poised for like destruction, so to speak, punishment. And then I feel like the fools are the ones that embrace it, meaning like they're not necessarily people who are making light of things, but they're the ones who feed into that social construct of like, oh yeah, like that was funny, and like, you know, like they're gathering to this destruction. So they're like gonna get part of it, but it's not as ready for them. You know, for them, it's like they're choosing a harsher path, which I feel like is why it's like, you know, the blows back is not the same as like being ready for punishment. You know, it's like,
So I hear the first. I hear the first part, and I like the first part. That is just to state that also feels like a mita connected mita thing, but in a slightly different way. Because we were saying a mita connected mita is they mock other people and they are aggressive towards them. So people are eager for them to be a victim. And then you're saying that because they make light of stuff and are kind of like constantly, like in a Leitz's mind, nothing is actually serious and real and like of consequences, because he's always just mocking stuff. So when that stuff does befall him, it's going to be very, very harsh naturally. Is that accurate summary of the first half? Okay, and then the second part, I'm still, maybe I'm not understanding. Are you changing the definition? Are you saying that this is not literal blows?
I guess I was sort of equating it to like a harder path, like more labor intensive, more maybe punishment, but like more just, I was looking at it as just like a self-imposed harsher path.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing that I'm kind of uncomfortable with, because it sounds like these are like corporal punishment that being imposed by someone else.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess, meaning like, I guess one can choose where to place themselves. So for example, like there's a certain blame that the Torah gives to like leaving yourself a slave.
Yeah.
You know, like that's why you get that whole, you know, so like there's a certain way you can place yourself to be on the bottom of like the working world, or you could try to be not at the bottom of the working world. So I sort of feel like it's saying they're choosing to have the most, like to have people, you know, above and behind them that make their life harder, meaning like they're choosing the hardest path.
So you're saying that they're setting themselves up to be in a place where they're going to be getting blows on the back. Yeah. Okay. So that I'm more amenable to that especially paired with your first half. Yeah. Okay. So where does this leave us? So I feel like we have two approaches now.
Basically, the crux of this point is that it's like for us, like each of us can play into either of these roles very easily. You know, there's a
Right.
curious idea that like doesn't click with us immediately.
Yeah.
And rather than like forcing that introspection,
That's another difference, right?
or
Yeah.
like, oh, like funny joke to like
Yeah.
ease the burden off ourselves
Yeah.
and like get this social currency.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
like,
Yeah. No, go ahead. Go
and
ahead.
then like we could also easily be the fool instead of the scoffer, whereas when someone else does that, we just feed into it and like
Right.
jump on that
Yeah.
bandwagon.
Regardless of whether we end up going with your interpretation of the pasuk that we said, I think this is a crossroads in terms of, are we talking to the full-fledged Leitzim and the full-fledged Ksilim? Because those are people, those are personality types, or are we addressing the Leitz-like element within us? You know, and just a slight support for that interpretation. The previous pasuk we did, not the way we explained it, but the previous pasuk was Eilial Yalit Mishpat, and one of the translations of Yalit was to mock, and that's not talking about a Leitz. That's talking about a regular person who's engaging in mockery, and it's specifically mocking judgment, which is what you're saying is, like that's what you're saying, that's how you're interpreting the pasuk, meaning that something is a matter of judgment, whether that's like a serious idea or justice or whatever, and like someone's mocking it, you know? So like that would lead me to think that it might be talking about the Leitzim-like element within us as opposed to the full-blown Leitzim. Yeah.
It's maybe closer Isaac's
Yeah.
idea, but I'm not sure exactly. So it could be, just to like clarify what the two punishments are. I think it makes sense that the leiztim gets as we were talking about, it gets the social punishment.
Yeah.
The people like wanting to enact judgment on him. So that's communicating because he's in the social realm trying to get ahead in the social realm by attacking people, so they're gonna attack him.
Yeah.
But then the seal, that also makes sense because he's all very focused on his taivas and
Right.
physical pleasure.
Right.
Comida for him would be to get physical pain.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess it's not natural necessarily, but it's still.
So here's the question more on this approach than on Zach's approach, which is, do these punishments help? Because we've kind of tossed around the idea before that like the leiztim are definitely beyond tochacha, they're definitely beyond rebuke. But will this actually help? It sounds like we are saying that it will help, or like if it helps, then this is the only thing that could help them. Meaning, like there was a statement Rביnu Yona made earlier when we were doing the Rביnu Yona on the Leitzim, that he said that one of the things that allows the Leitzim to mock other people for their faults is because he's blind to his own faults. And Rביnu Yona explicitly said if he saw his own faults, then there'd be no way he could bring himself to mock other people for their faults. So that kind of implies that there is a sort of avenue for him to change if he does get a taste of his own medicine in some way. Like if he sees, like if he really feels what it's like to be completely attacked and shunned and people eager for his downfall, maybe that could make him realize like, oh, that's what I've been doing to other people. Yeah.
Maybe another possibility of like how this plays into the reader's mind is that there's a common like complaint, so to speak, or like line of reasoning that people bring up, which is like, how come bad people like see success and like be happy and like, you know? So I sort of feel like this could be addressing an element of that where he's just talking to a regular reader and saying like, you know, you think these people have like high social currency or who are like getting away with short-sightedness, and you just like immediately go to like, oh, they're fine.
Yeah.
But he's just like spelling it out. Like there's like a very natural order to that type of person.
Yeah.
And it's not a good natural order.
Right. Yeah. So that I saw in a lot of the mafarshim that I think fits into different interpretations. Basically, the point of the pasuk is to emphasize reward and punishment, the reality of reward and punishment. And in this case, it's very clear because these people, their lifestyle is directly setting them up to suffer these consequences, you know? So like, if you see someone engaging in mockery, like there is this feeling of like, oh, you know, this person's getting away with it. They're not getting away. Like like there is going to be it's just like, you might not be seeing the fallout right now, but there is going to be a tremendous fallout when, you know, whenever it happens.
And that's the same for the seal also.
So that's going to depend on how we're doing it. Like according to your approach for the Ksil, then it is a natural thing somehow.
Mhm.
But according to this, it's an artificially imposed thing. So I don't think it works out as well for us.
Well, it could be saying that.
Well,
Yeah.
even saying it's artificially imposed, I sort of feel like you can still say there's a natural artificially imposed, meaning like,
Let's say like getting arrested, like that's artificially imposed, but it's only a matter of time before someone who's engaging in like reckless illegal behavior is going to get arrested, you know?
right.
So yeah.
Right. So it could be, first of all, one option is it could be talking to the like law giver people,
Yeah.
whatever people in power, like saying just like, you know, these, Leitzim get natural consequences, you can inflict, artificial consequences
Yeah.
on the Ksilim.
Yeah.
Or it could be saying, just like you see very clearly, a Ksilim gets whipped
Yeah.
when he does bad stuff. So to the Leitzim in a more
Oh,
subtle
okay.
way, get natural consequences.
Okay. That would be that I would like as well. because I think it is like, I think it can be fairly obvious that the only way you can really stop the Ksilim from doing stuff is to hit him, you know, or like impose an artificial consequence, but it's not as obvious with the leiztim. And then that makes that also fits in with this reading of like, you know, the Kiddush is nachonu leiztim shvatim, is that they're ready for him.
Right.
Just like it's clear that the way to punish fools is with whips on the back.
So it could be possibly it could be for the Leitzim, like relate when you
Relates.
when-
No. Yeah.
like when everyone's attacking you, you should relate to it as you're getting whipped for
Yeah.
your scoffing. Just like a seal, when he gets whipped, he has to think like, oh, what did I do to deserve this?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
I hear it.
So,
That's
anyway.
good. Because I want to move on to the next pasuk tomorrow because we need the whole day for tomorrow. Then I want to read this Rביnu Yona, even though it may or may not be in line with what we've been saying. But it seems very fundamental. So let's look at Rביnu Yona. He actually starts off. So left column. No, next page. Next page. Yeah, right column. And this first part is not really, I'm not really interested in, but we'll read it anyway. So it's coming to review, to decide regarding the two bad midos that he mentioned. Now, we didn't read the Rביnu Yona on the last one, so I think this is going off of the last one. Okay, but we'll just rev into it. Which one's worse than the other? Midas hamelitz mishpat ra'a yotzer. So he says that the trait of mocking justice is worse, as we explained above. Okay, so I guess if you want to read that, We haven't read it. So it's saying that the death sentences are proper for a leitz. So they don't destroy the world with their bad midah. Okay, fine. This is the part I want to get to. There's no hope for the bal lashon hara, like for someone who's habituated to speak badly, to speak negatively. That he'll return through rebuke from his ways once he's habituated. Because there's no cure for a person's tongue, a person's speech is not in his control once he has habituated it and taught it to speak based on the desires of his heart and on what arises in his spirit. So it sounds like he's saying that there can be a point of no return where you've accustomed yourself so much to just saying whatever you feel like and speaking like aggressively like the Leitzim that you can no longer control it. Okay. But there is hope for the Rasha to subdue his inclination. So it is interesting, Zach. I didn't realize this at first, that he is equating the Ksilim with a Rasha. I don't know where he gets that from, but he says kiroi lahalom osam v'makus gedolos. It's proper to strike them with great blows. Harasha yitzro v'yimtol be'evar v'matav, because there is hope that the Rasha will subdue his inclination and rule over his limbs and his actions. V'yarchik ha'aven v'ya'id alav, and he'll distance iniquity and testify about it im yasehu acher, if someone else does it. Okay, and then he just explains the words. Nachonu, blah blah blah. V'inyan hoda v'huchnu b'dinei shemayim la'leitim shvatim. B'dinei shemayim v'hinei melit mishpat yikar leitz ki kol ish asher yilamed lashono l'daber al pi tayvas nafsho lo yator bo levilti l'daber dvarim she'enam mhuganim, etc. Fine. So his main idea is that basically the leitz, there is no hope, and the only thing that is going to affect them. And when I say affect them, I don't mean like reform them. The only thing that's going to affect them is Dina Shemayim, is like divine judgment. I don't know how he's understanding divine
Right,
judgment,
I mean,
but
maybe it's also saying like the fact that they're ready means like, I mean, life is about improvement. So as soon as you're no longer improving, you're just ready for judgment.
right. Yeah. You're as good as dead. Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like I wanted to read this, even though we're not going to get an idea out of it necessarily right now, but it feels like it's important that he's saying that the Russia can change and the late cannot. That there's something about speech and maybe the relationship to speech and like values and ideas that once you abandon it to the habit of like unrestrained speech, you can't change it. Yeah.
Or maybe I guess with actions, it's well, I say it's hard to change actions, but you can if you make like the steps to like change, then it feels more real because you you like refrain from doing an action. But with speech, it's because it's much more like wispy and insubstantial. You you can't like it's much harder to get into like habit of good speech because each time that you let's say refrain from mocking something, it doesn't feel like you did anything.
Right.
So it's like extremely difficult or maybe even impossible to change.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just thought of another idea that related to something Zev said earlier, which I thought was cool when he switched the perspective by saying like the person, you said like from the point of view of law. So like a similar kind of twist that I feel like really fits in with what he's saying is like, he says there's no path of rebuke for a scoffer, meaning there might be other paths, but it's not going to come from you.
Right.
So from the point of view as how you can interrelate with these characters, one, you just have to assume like they're ready for judgment. Like there's nothing from your perspective, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
But like from the other perspective, harsh blows is from your perspective. Meaning like how do you interrelate with this person? Like directly.
Right. Meaning knowing that you should not try to punish someone because it's not going to help is just as important in being in a law enforcing role than knowing who to punish and how to punish.
Yeah, right. If you're trying to punish elites, putting aside like actual practical like enacting judgments, all that's going to happen is you're not going to change him. You're just going to make him mad at you, and he's going to attack you.
Yeah, right. And that's going to weaken your position as a law enforcer.
Although to be honest, I wasn't taking the full sense of like law enforcement. I just meant like from a person who's interrelating with these characters in your life, and you might want to like affect them for the better. One you should know is like you're just wasting your time. And, you know, the other is like here's how you interact.
Right. Yeah.
That's more of a like.
That makes sense.
I will say about what you said about the late, like I think it's someone. So I actually know someone who had past tense late like tendencies.
Yeah.
And then I don't know exactly what happened, but they basically like got rid of that meeting.
Yeah. It's definitely possible. It's just
And like I was just thinking about it just now, and like that was like the main like dynamic and like at least like I would have categorized the person as elites.
Yeah.
But like now it's just like totally not like that.
Right.
I guess the question is, sorry, did you rebuke them at all to help them make that transition?
I think what would probably happen was they got a lot of consequences.
Yeah, I was gonna say I could really like the classic example is I could definitely see if you have like a bully in like middle school, and then that bully like goes to high school and then gets bullied. That can be like a wake up call, like oh that's what I was doing, you know, and then that can make them change. But yeah, but it's not coming from an artificially imposed thing.
Wait, so as you're talking about it, it sounds like the late sort of has like disconnect where like he doesn't really like identify with the
Right. That was that Rubino Yona point about not seeing his own blemishes.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like a bit disconnect even from the reality, because we're saying reality imposes these punishments and they don't see that coming.
Yeah. Right.
So like once
Yeah.
that catches up with them, they might
Yeah.
have a chance.
Okay, I feel like this opens up the area in terms of understanding Leitzim a bit, even though we didn't quite boil it down. I want to go over like the ideas that we came up with at some point, but I also want to move on tomorrow, so we can feel free to discuss it later. Yeah. All right.
Can I ask you a question on
Yeah.
your shirt?
On my theory, yes, I'm going to stop this time. All right. See you, David.
All right, thank you.